So for me, accountability is probably one of the most important things when it comes to restorative justice, right? Like, you need to make sure that every action you do, like, you are like owning your shit and trying to make sure, not just owning it and saying I'm sorry and like keep repeating behavior, because that's just manipulation. Like,
Mm-hmm.
accountability is where you say you're sorry and you change your behavior.
Yeah.
Um, and I know for me, like, uh, sometimes like people don't want to hear I'm sorry; they just want to see you change.
Yeah.
And sometimes like I'm sorry can't cut it. Like, there's certain things, if a person were to tell me I'm sorry today, I would have a hard time forgiving them.
Yeah.
Um, I'd be a lot more apt to forgive them if I saw they changed their behavior.
Yeah.
But it's always going to sting, you know. Um, and I can never take back like the things I did in my madness and that chaotic lifestyle that comes with addiction and alcoholism. I can never take that back, right?
Yeah.
The best next thing I can do though is to just make sure that like none of that shit repeats itself. Which is why, like, after a few months of sobriety, I noticed there was a lack of recovery in Carbondale.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's plenty of places to get fucked up around here. Right?
Yeah.
I can say the F word, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Cuss as much as you want
Okay. But when it comes to, like, the recovery scene, there's not a whole lot going on. And I remember when I came out as, like, being trans and, like, queer, and my sponsor actually, like, would crack really inappropriate jokes about it. And so I left the AA meetings. Now, granted, like, maybe I wasn't that serious about recovery if I let that run me off, but I don't want to sit in a room with my sponsor who was, like, making sex jokes and stuff about, like,
Yeah.
you know, that's not cool.
No,
So
I can't. When somebody tries to put a barrier between somebody else and their health care in that particular way, and at that point, right, like, sobriety is health care, it's self care, it's so many different forms of care for the folks around you. Like, when somebody tries to put a barrier in between you and that sobriety, as like literally failing to acknowledge you as a person, which is what that was, right? Like, that's not a shortcoming for you.
thank you. Yeah, and like, so I was away from the rooms for a while. Granted, like, my drinking started mostly like at the bars and around like punk houses, but I quickly fell like back into drinking by myself, waking up and being sick and having the shakes, and like being at the liquor store 5 minutes before they even opened because I drank everything the other night before and didn't save myself something to keep me from getting sick.
Yeah.
So after, I guess I can get into like what really finally got me sober.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had a very close friend who like refused to like give up on me, right? Put forth so much energy and so much love and compassion into trying to get me to become sober. He's like, why don't we try radical sobriety? I know you think like some of the things in the 12 steps are bullshit with like God. I have a problem with God too. And that worked for a little while. But it wasn't until like finally like he just, we got into a confrontation and it turned into a blowout, and basically we didn't talk for about a month.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm like, all right, like, all these people are leaving my life. Like, this person who like was really by my side and meant a lot to me is now leaving too. Maybe I should give it a shot. And so I started doing online recovery through Zoom, which is like more queer oriented. So it's like you don't have to worry about that shit so much. Like, we literally had like a guy who was like wearing Trump hats to the meetings. I'm just like, okay, I know, like, you know, what do they say? Principles, not personalities.
Yeah.
And but anyways, so I hit them really hard. I got a sponsor. I started working the steps. I was going to meetings every day for my first like month,
Uh-huh.
and slowly I saw this like obsession with drinking and feeling sorry with myself turning into like the world is bigger than me.
Yeah.
And a lot of those meetings I had at the CEJ, and the CEJ like gave me a space where I could feel like I had my own little corner of the world where I didn't have to worry about like someone walking in. Like I put my headphones on, I go to the meeting,
Yeah.
and pretty soon it turned into me wanting to host my own meeting, and that's been kind of hit or miss. I have had like at 1.5 people show up, which was great.
Yeah.
And I've got a regular guy who comes every week, and gosh, seeing like the newcomer is a really important role because like you see like that it's still out there and it's still kicking ass and it's still like just relentless. And you know, he came in, he was real quiet at first, and basically it was just like, you know, he just wanted his coffee and to listen, and I gave him that. And after a while, we started to get to know each other.
You're good. You're good.
He's like, so, like, are you, like, a girl or a boy? And I'm like, fuck. I'm
Okay.
like, no. I'm just like, no. And he just kind of looks at me. I'm like, what does it matter? Like, he's like, well, I was just wondering. And I'm like, I mean, I'm trans.
Yeah.
He's like, okay. Doesn't bother me. And I was like, thank God.
Like he just didn't quite know.
Yeah.
and he needed some more education.
And I think when like you're out there like getting your ass kicked by addiction and alcoholism,
Yeah.
like you're willing to get like recovery from whoever. Like so yeah. And I've been sober for 6 months and 8 days.
Count every day.
I do. The 28th, and it's sometimes I think about it and it's just like, wow, like I didn't really think, like, I knew things would get better, and they have like something called the promises where like all those bridges you've burned and all that shit you fucked up and destroyed back in your madness starts coming back slowly. And like I knew that it was going to come back, but it's coming back like quick. And like I owe a lot of that to like AA, the Center for Empowerment and Justice, and the friends who stuck by my side and helped me remain accountable, helped like do restorative justice with me. And like I won't get into like you know, cancel culture too much. But I do say that it does completely like destroy any potential for growth. And yeah, like I feel like I have homies on my side today that will be like, you know, like ride or die kind of thing.
Nice. That's good. Those are the people that you need in your life. People that you need in your life. Folks that we have as guests here. Episode 89 of the WTF Carbondale podcast, where we talk to interesting people about their interesting lives, and we tie it all back to this little place we call home, Carbondale, Illinois. Cy, thanks for being vulnerable. Like, I mean, it's not an easy thing to be, and these conversations range in how serious they are, right, and how personal we get. And I mean, just, you know, wanting to kind of lead with that. I mean, it's not easy, but you're showing people like there's work that you can do. I appreciate, because you really took ownership of effort and work in the space of the center, right? And there's all sorts of kind of ebb and flow in that space. There's contributions, there's takeaway, and everybody
Mm-hmm.
gets something, everybody provides something back. But it's one of the difficult positions that some people occupy in that building, right, is kind of this center point, this pivot
Mm-hmm.
point, right? And I feel like that's something that you've occupied
Mm-hmm.
in, most recent months
Absolutely.
in that space, right? Really, really eyeing, okay, there's some organizational structure that may have been here that needs to find itself in space again, and like, thank you, because you're a bridge now for a lot of folks that have been in the center in different iterations, different versions while Jim was with us. That when the call goes out, we're all back, right? And that's because you're in place to provide that connection to the here and now for folks like myself, like Jennifer, Solomon, whoever that has not been in space for the past couple of years. So seriously, it's a big thing.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that Jim didn't let me go, and I was able to play that role, and it's called the Center for Empowerment and Justice, right? And that place really did help me empower myself, and now I just want to give that to other people.
Yeah.
And I think part of that too is I've always just feeling drawn, even though I've done a lot of damage, right? I've hurt people, I've done some things I'm really ashamed of.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I don't like to help people, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't and
Well, I mean, and how can you know what really helping somebody is if you don't know what hurt looks like just the same? But something that you may have taken on yourself, or something that you may have outwardly projected onto somebody else as well, right? It's one thing to just be somebody that says, this is my professional interest and I'm here to help people. But if you haven't had those experiences that really underpin why people need help, how can you really know what a flexible, really flexibility, I think, is kind of the idea here, especially in the center space, right? Is that the flexibility of the help that anybody may need when they walk through that door. Sorry, I'm not trying to conquer this conversation here.
No, you make a very valid point. It's these people, some people won't even accept help from someone unless they know how it is. The best advice is the advice an addict can give another addict, or an alcoholic can give another alcoholic. And I think that kind of comes with the territory. People see that you're real, you do know what it's like, and you've been there, and they're a lot more apt to open up. And I've met so many walks of life being at the center, and just all the stories you hear, and some of them will make you cry, for sure. And being able to play a role in whether it's getting that person a cup of coffee, or giving them a hug, or help, or bigger things helping, showing them how to apply for a job or whatever, that's what I consider currency to me, is knowing that, and maybe it does bring up the question too, is is there such a thing as a selfless act, right? Am I doing this for this person, or am I doing this so I can get a scratch on my good noodle board or whatever, right? But either way, you're still helping them, and it's just seeing people grow, and feeling the energy shift from just hopelessness, and seeing them come back time and after time, and that hopelessness slowly starts to kind of go away. It might come back in full force within a week, but you don't give up. My friend didn't give up on me, so I'm not going to give up on people. And sometimes it's really easy to want to give up on people, right?
Man, I mean, when was it? Is it James that was the other guy at the meeting? That's one of the faces that I wouldn't know from the past. So when he was talking about, hey, Bruce come back and doing laundry, I was like, Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's just you got it's like its own little sitcom, right? Everybody loves Bruce. And Bruce is a pain in the ass for everybody, but you gotta love
You gotta
Bruce,
love
right?
him. Right.
Like, because that's it. That's what you got to do.
Yeah. It does become its own family, and Jennifer's talked about this too, where it's like, it is a tight knit group of like a rag and tag bunch sometimes, and like to have the privilege of being part of that, where like I don't feel like I'm being like looked down upon, or people aren't coming off to me condescending, or it's a really good feeling, and like everyone there, that family has each other's back. Like,
because you're just there. Like if you're there, like if you walk in the door and you make it through the first 5 minutes and you go, I want to stick around, right? Then you know you're supposed to be there, right? Because it's kind of a self-filtering space. Like if you're, and it doesn't matter if you walk in the door as somebody like Jim, right? Like a storied civil rights attorney who's been on the street his entire life, like putting in the work, to somebody who may be displaced and just passing through town, that like everybody, if you walk in there, you either know whether or not you belong there.
Absolutely.
But like there are all levels of people all throughout society that just know they belong there.
It's like the land of misfit toys, right? Like and Jim was always really good at like not looking down on people too much, and like just seeing people for people. And
kind of gives you the verbal smack upside the head when you need it.
Right.
But everybody gets one of those, no matter.
Or would just completely dominate the whole conversation. But
tap and go. How did you like? Are you from Southern Illinois? Or how did you get here to Carbondale? What's your
right? So I actually like grew up in Blairsville.
Is that's like 40 minutes out? Like headed,
I think so.
Like Williamson, Franklin County direction.
Something like I'm not sure.
All right, cool. That'll work.
So from the age of like 4 to about 10, and then like after 10, I kind of just bounced from like Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Indiana, but like just back and forth between just all kinds of places. And I moved to Marion from Michigan, Flint, Michigan, mind you.
Oof.
That's where the world, like where I got really woken up to the world and just how fucked shit is sometimes.
So when were you in Flint, Michigan? I mean, were you during parts of the water, like early on in the water crisis?
Yep, like 2014.
It's sickening that like
it's horrible
that we just as a society, like we're talking about trillions of dollars in infrastructure right now, and we can't just snap our fingers and say trillions of dollars. Oh, there's the crumbs that are $300 million to go actually fix a single entire city's water infrastructure that's killing people and has been killing people for
it's I wasn't really into the whole activist scene as much as I wanted to be, but like when I heard when I turned on my faucet and the water was fucking brown, like why is this okay? And then you hear about like literally like people getting sick and dying, like you said. But so lived in Flint, and then I came down to Illinois to help my mom and my dad, my stepdad. Well, he's dad. I don't care if he's not blood.
There you go.
And because he had Alzheimer's, and he was getting really sick, and my mom is bedbound because she has a really brutal autoimmune disease that like causes her a lot of pain, and so basically it's like, we need your help. I cannot get a rein on him. So I came down, helped like as much as I could for a few years until eventually he moved to Florida with his kids into hospice and then passed away in 2019.
I'm sorry.
Doesn't hurt as much anymore. Thank you. Yeah.
Did you have a good relationship?
Yeah. Yeah, I really did. He showed me how to ride a horse, which was a hoot.
Yeah.
Well, and he would just, I mean, we would, you know, go fishing, and he brought me ice fishing, and he kind of played the role of savior, because my mother was leaving an abusive domestic violence like household, and like we like and like it was weird because when he would get mad, he would just walk away, like
Yeah.
it didn't blow into an argument or but yeah, so he kind of played the role of savior, and I basically grew up with my dad for most of my younger years, and then I went to go live with my father, my biological father, and that's a whole mess that I won't even get into, but I ended up coming back, and then moved to Marion, and after that happened, I moved to Carbondale, and Good Samaritans, because I was like in active addiction and having nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I I remember what showed me that Carbondale was way different from Marion was the Pride event. That was a big one.
Yeah.
And I went to the Pride event, and it really like there was just like this click, like I just felt like I finally like was okay to be here. Like Carbondale was like a good fit.
Yeah.
I saw a like trans woman jamming out on guitar on a podium, no one thinking anything of it. You do that shit in Marion, you're gonna get your ass beat.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I hung around the flyover for a little bit. Well, not a little bit, but started going around the punk scene, and just and like trying to seek a validation from everyone, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
like abandonment issues. I need validation constantly.
Yeah.
And
Well, not knowing for sure your permanency in a social situation.
right,
Right.
yeah.
That lowers the threshold of like comfort and just seeking out
Mhm.
that validation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Years later, you're like, oh, these are the people I'm going to spend the rest of my life around.
Yeah.
But then it probably wasn't quite there, right? It was just
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because I never really got well established. I was always kind of bouncing around.
Mm-hmm.
And I caught hell in school, man. Like, I was the weird kid, right? Like, I remember my biological father had me on, like, I consider myself a, like, survivor of institutionalization.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, he just had me on enough medicine for an adult, and I was a 14-year-old. And,
Yeah.
like, so, like, I'm walking around in school, like, zombified. People think I'm weird when really it's just I'm over-medicated.
Yeah.
So I caught hell for that. Like, it was bad. I ended up going into a psych ward and self-sabotaging my program over and over again so I could just stay there because I didn't want to go home.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so when it comes to like abandonment issues and like not having a sense of self or like not really being used to establishing healthy friendships like throughout your life, like
Yeah.
and that's kind of like where the CEJ though also fits in because you come to the CEJ and it's nothing but like I remember when I went there and one of the first things I saw was Jennifer and just like her great energy and her big smile and her friendliness, bubbly personality, and
Yeah.
just like it was great. It was definitely like felt welcoming for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, it's the lack of shoes. So I'm like a no shoes household, right? And like I've got a bunch of weird little ticks about me. And we know how Jennifer doesn't wear her shoes anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So like I wear shoes in my house. I wear house shoes. When Jennifer comes into my house with her bare feet that are her shoes,
That's a good one. That's a good one.
and so to like a complete yin to my yang on like just
It's
how
so much easier to clean your feet though. Like you just. But no, I get it.
Yeah, totally. Whatever you say, Si.
Yeah. I was listening to it earlier actually for like prepping, like kind of like seeing how it goes down and stuff. And yeah, that was definitely something very unique I caught. Like I'm like, where's her shoes? Like, okay, this like I wouldn't walk barefoot out here. There might be broken glass, like, but just and that's like part of her like just her attitude and just it's great. It's cool.
Exposure toughens.
Yeah.
That's kind of her
exposure to
like if you were to like boil it down into just a couple words, right? Mm-hmm. For Jennifer, like exposure toughens.
Definitely.
Yeah. I'm sure that's an anybody thing, but I'm just Jennifer's feet. Sorry.
No, sorry. You're not all you're thinking about now is that's okay. That's okay. I got caught up on it for a while too.
Do you go out? Have you gotten to go do any horse stuff with Jennifer at all?
No. Like it was pretty much a role of just like, like kind of me trying to help these people, or like we've never actually like really hung out. We might have met at PK's maybe a couple times when I was drinking, just happened to bump into each other. Yeah. Now we're starting to talk a lot more though because Jim fucking died, right? Yeah. Like, but no, very good person, definitely. And I think anyone who is going to make it like volunteering or working at the center kind of has to have that like in them to like want to help people and not expect like anything in return. Yeah. It's like, I guess I could go, kind of pivot back around to that. It's like the gift that you get back is seeing this person like improve their life, seeing this person get a job, right? Seeing this person get bonded out of jail, seeing this person not get the book thrown at them because
there were advocates there for it.
Thank you, exactly. That's the reward, and like that's precious. And if that's not your thing, well, maybe you don't belong there.
And that's okay.
And that's okay,
There's
too.
There's a lot of other places that you might belong.
Absolutely.
When did have you always been into like graphic design stuff, or is that like
I just kind of dabbled in that recently. Like we were trying to promote the center with like the art show and all this and that, and someone was trying to show me how to do graphic design, and they were like overcomplicating it, and I'm just like, I'll just find something else out. So I asked a friend, I was like, hey, what program did you use to make blah blah blah? And so I started tinkering around with it, and like I really enjoy it. Like it's fun, it's like calming, it's I kind of like, it's kind of like personally, I don't know, it's cool, it's fun.
Yeah, similar ritualistic functions of previous parts of life, right? Like being able to pick it up and like know that the pen stroke is there, and that the color wheel is there, and that all of the different things that you want to use and have access to are just there to play with.
Yeah, that's all it really is. It's just like instruments to play with and like draw with, and like you can make whatever design you want. Like, and sometimes it's like really overwhelming though, because it's just like there's too many options, like, and so you kind of have to like talk yourself to like, well, maybe just try that. But yeah,
nice.
Yeah, it's just I can't draw, right? So I just have to have like that and music are kind of like my creative outlets.
Have you always been a music person too? Or?
I grew up with a piano when I was a little kid.
Oh, nice.
And sometimes I would get bored of like just playing video games, or it was too hot outside or whatever. So I kind of would just like, just play on it, and soon I kind of developed an ear. I'm like, okay, that sounds bad, that sounds good, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'm not by any means good, but I can just kind of play some basic chords or whatever, and it's more for the purpose of like helping me like sort my thoughts and like kind of like decompress. And music is really great for that. It really is good for centering and just like getting emotions out. And every time I get done playing, like, especially now that I can play because I don't drink, right?
Yeah.
It's nice to have. It's a nice to have for sure.
Was that like one of the things with like alcohol and in the addiction space was like part of the self-expression like really came through?
Yeah. It's actually kind of cringy now that I think about it. It's like, yeah, it's just starving artists, like burnout, like whatever. And I used to like glamorize it.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's not a good look.
not a good look.
But
was that kind of like the direction of the path like you wanted to be on? Was like the artist space? Like, is that kind of like what you've always had in
the
your
artist,
mind?
like alcoholic junkie, like typical, yeah, exactly. And it's like it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
It was not fun. Like there may have been times in which like we had fun, but it was fun until it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I think it was more of a way to co-sign my own addiction, right? It's like, oh, this is just who I am. Like, this is just like a style that I chose to be.
Mm-hmm.
This is what color crayon I am, right? Like, and yeah, and then like finally when like more and more bridges started to burn down and like more people were like messaging me like, hey, like you should go get help, like,
Yeah.
you know. And I spent probably a good 12 years being an alcoholic junkie.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say that on record, and yeah, it might come to bite me in the ass later, but like honestly,
Listen,
like,
man, the My Pillow guy is doing great.
It's true.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
So, sometimes you just got to slide in a good My Pillow.
No,
big.
that's good. I think part of that though is like also accountability and true recovery is like that. What a better way to be accountable than go on live and be like, yeah, I have a problem that I am like really trying to get a hold of.
Yeah.
And yeah, and there's like some kind of beauty to that though, to be able to like look at the ruins that you met, the mess you made, and realize that like that's not who I am today. Like I don't, that's not where my moral compass aligns. That's not what I serve today. Like, and then you can see other people who want to get like kind of where you are or where you're going, but don't think they have it in them. Like, I'm not going to lie to you, Columbo. I thought for sure I was going to die from this, right? Yeah. And that's why I used to go so hard, was like, well, I'll just die young. Just be reckless. It will take me out. Yeah. And now I'm like 32 years old, and I'm like, oh, fuck, what do I do now? Like, I'm not, like, I'm still here. Shit. So, yeah, now it's like on like maximum speed, and I have to like, yeah. But anyways,
what was what are some of the tools that you've had to like pick up on this journey to like separate the parts of your identity that are like, you know, from the addiction, right? Like the stuff that you want to maintain, the artist mentality, the music, the dress style, the social scene, like all of the components that are like the things that you still love, right?
Right.
Just like separated from the components of addiction. Like, is that something that has come all in one fell swoop for you, or has it been like you've had to take
It's
piece by
been-
piece at a time? Take your time, get your sips in.
Yeah,
We can-
yeah. It's definitely been like a overtime kind of thing where,
Yeah.
like I, like, basically like it's kind of forged who I am, but like in a way,
Yeah.
right? But it's not like all I am today, and like I accept that, like, you know, I like music because I like music, not because like I like to get high and then try to write a song. I like dressing like this because this is how I like to dress, not because it's like associated with grunge and like, you know, using drugs and stuff. And I associate like there are certain things, like certain songs, certain shoes actually I can't wear because of
Yeah.
it's a trigger for me.
Yeah.
There's certain like, yeah, I won't get too big into it, but there are, and then like when I feel that like little demon scratching in the back of my head, like, hey, remember how good this felt or whatever, and it's like I put them back in the box, and then I just like, no, we don't touch that box anymore.
Yeah.
And then what I do on top of that to make sure the box stays locked, I cram in an AA meeting, I call my sponsor, and
Yeah.
like I do a gratitude list. And that's helped me get by so far. And also I'm like really like serious about this time. Like before I would go to rehab or get sober for a short span of time to get people off my back, or oh no, I'm about to lose my job, or I'm about to go to jail because I'm on probation for drugs. Maybe I shouldn't, you know, like. And it's so much more empowering when you do it for yourself because you just are sick of it, and you are sick of like the kind of person it makes you, and just like really just also because you want to live, because you want to, you know, get somewhere so you can also help other people. And like doing care work as an alcoholic who is like on a self-destructive path never works well. I will let you know that right now, because it turns from like self-care just kind of feeds another addiction, because instead of you like actually doing this for this person to try and help them, you're doing it because you're a drunk full of self-pity. And you want to see some kind of like correlation and make some correlation with you and that person. And also so you can pay more attention to other people's problems and work on your own.
So the thing that I'm kind of taken aback by in our conversation is thinking about, you know, being on parallel timelines as people that are 32. Ugh, it's such a like a weird number to be
Weird
at.
number, yeah.
Like it's just like you haven't quite left all of that youth behind, but like you're not quite at the point to like acknowledge adulthood, right? But like just how tough that point between like mid 20s, 24, 25 and like 30 is. Like, that's just a really like tough spot for most people that nobody really talks about, right? There's what your childhood looks like. There's what your teenage years look like. There's, you know, what the formation in the young adult, you know, in college years look like for some folks, and what the but like one in even like, oh well, you're gonna do all this in your 30s, you're gonna do all this in your 40s, but nobody's like, hey, there's this like dark spot like right in between 25 and 30 where everything's just gonna be trash.
Yeah.
And like decisions are gonna be really really tough, and like life's just gonna throw a lot of stuff at you, and like to go through that point in life with, you know, the albatrosses of alcoholism and addiction, right? Like that's all the more like, I don't know, formative of the work that you can do in the future, right? Like, my God, to combine like the just the traditionally worst parts of life with like some of the tradition, like just some of the worst things that somebody would have to face in life, and then just like carrying that forward to other people, like.
Yeah, and you bring up that point too, and it like makes me think of all the funerals I had to go to for people who like didn't make it.
Yeah.
There was a guy who was 17, like, and it's awful. And so there is that gray spot where you're kind of just like stuck in this limbo. Like, I went to college for 2 years of psychology. And
Perfect.
perfect.
You
Yeah,
knew what you needed. You knew
did
what
my
you-
thing right. Got it. Got my little badge. But yeah, like most of it is just kind of an abyss.
No.
Um, I think my brain is kind of like trying to like protect itself and just like block a lot of shit out.
Yeah.
But yeah, no one it doesn't come with that warning of like, oh yeah, by the way, there's like this weird spot where you just feel like you're spinning your wheels the whole time.
And you're just gonna fall right off this cliff.
Yeah.
Whoosh.
Yeah.
Good luck. There's no training wheels at this point. Like this is the very first time in which all these decisions are going to be yours, and all of the consequences are going to be yours just the same.
Right.
Hope you catch some wind on your way down.
Right. I hope you pull the cord quick enough.
Right.
Like, yeah. Yeah. It's just, and like you kind of combine that with what they call dual diagnosis, right? Where it's like you have an underlying mental issue and then paired with a drug addiction. So it's like just vicious cycle of like use and mental illness. And I do feel like a lot of it is formed out of trauma. And why I'm big on like why I talk about trauma a lot. Like I don't talk about like my traumas or like trigger people, but
like trauma is a concept.
And like how important it is to actually try and to come to peace with your trauma. Like I know right now, if I wasn't seeing a therapist every week, 2 weeks, like I would be in much worse shape. I probably wouldn't agree to come here. My recovery would be shaky. But it's almost like it's this like thing that just needs attention, and once you give it like enough attention, it won't need as much attention, but it's always going to need a little bit of attention, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it never goes away, right? I haven't smoked a cigarette in age 32 and over 10 years now, right?
Oh, wow.
And it's like but that doesn't mean that box that hasn't been checked at some point in time, and you just got to make sure you don't go back and check it again.
Yep.
Well, so what was your first introduction to like the block just on Washington Street? Like when I know, I mean, obviously, like just first connected with folks through the flyover. But do you have does it stick out in your mind like your early time on the block? Because I mean, just that block in general, even before any of the white people that now have inhabited the space. It was a traditionally black business district, but it still can, like there's still
heard,
so much more to it now. Just and like it is in the past, however many decades, just looks different. And even like now compared to 2 years ago or 5 years ago or what have you. And I wasn't sure where your first introduction to the space was.
When I think of the block and my early interaction, I think of like tool library and open store hours, and then a bunch of people congregating in front of the CEJ, and like kind of like this chaotic but also very intoxicating energy. And I'm not saying intoxicating because everyone's drinking beer and you could smell it from halfway down the block, but it was just people were out there just like talking, and it just felt like it had its own little special place in Carbondale. People coming, like running in and out, people running, folks to her car, taking off, coming back, people starting arguments, people de-escalating those arguments. I was one of those people. I remember one time there was shouting, like it sounded bad, like, oh, someone's in trouble, shouting. And I walked over there, and two people had gotten to a confrontation, and one pulled a knife. And I got the person that didn't have the knife away from the person who had the knife, and kind of just like, talked to them, and what was going on, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And by the time they got back, like, everything was chill. And at first I was, like, in shock and awe. I'm like, basically the general consensus was, oh, okay, everything's fine now. I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, we're fine. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. And I kind of just got used to that. Because although they'll say that, like, I mean, you might think that, like, people are gonna, and sometimes people do get hurt, but I do feel like back in, like, 2019, like, people really, it was just, like, a group of people who hung out and kind of had each other's back in a way. You know, it's like, that's one of the things I always admired about the CJs. It's like, it didn't turn anyone away, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was for all, it was all inclusive. And it's so easy to see someone struggling and feel bad and then just keep walking.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like the CJ is the opposite. It's like if you're a person who is well off, like, you're gonna look like the one out of the picture, right? Like, you're gonna be the one that's not, you know, like. So yeah.
On the other side, I mean, what you said, you know, just keep on walking by, right? It's like the place where if you do have something in your life that, like, needs addressed, like, you can stop, right? Like, you can stop and you can turn towards and then walk through the door. And now,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
now we've got something here. I mean, and just the people that live their lives removed from conflict, right? Like in the U.S., like, there's a lot of people that are just very privileged to not have to look at, visualize, process, like, handle, you know, conflict.
Yeah.
At all levels, right? We see it as this, like, ethereal thing, like, oh, it's just in media, right? We just see it on the news. We just this, we just that. It's somebody else's.
It seems so artificial.
Yeah.
And yeah, you do, like, the media does have this way to almost desensitize you to all the bad stuff that's happening, right? Because they don't want you to think about that. They don't want you to think about the fact that, like, over 500,000 people just in the U.S. alone have died from COVID.
Yeah.
They want you to get back to work, right?
Keep the machine going.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like, the fact that we are, in a lot of cases, just seen as a price tag, as something that produces capital, is absolutely appalling to me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and on the other side of that, right, it's not to say that you can't have some kind of entrepreneurial spirit to want to do something and make something. Like, that's the other cool part with the center, right, is that, like, we've always been trying to hustle. Like, everybody, like, one of the things that, like, you've had to have in that space is, like, you want to make something somewhere, some way.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you want to do this, you want to do that. Like, you know, you've got motivation to, like, find that next level, but at the same time, like, you're not just doing that because, well, I'm trying to, you know, get the most that I can out of everybody around me and, like, forget them all. It's like, no, you got to come in here and just, like, earn with it alongside the people that, like, want you to succeed. Yeah. They're just going to give you their time. Like, you've got to show that you value your own time so that other people will value your time, and then present them with a project to pursue along the way.
Well said. Yeah, Jim was always really big. Like, I think that's one of the initial, like, things about the center was, like, you go there and, like, a solar tree came out of there, a hot dog stand came out of there, like, a bunch of success stories of.
We ran that tiny house in the Lights Fantastic Parade.
Yeah.
I think at least 2 years.
Yeah, and a lot of these people have spent a long time in the system.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like, with, like, how society is formed and, like the whole second class citizen, like, how once you're a felony, you're basically not even a fucking person anymore. Like, And these people like come here, and a lot of them do like find a direction again, and a lot of that did come from Mr. Chapman and the workers at the CJ, like Jennifer and myself and multiple others. And it was kind of like a space where you could just like, okay, I have this idea, and Jim would be like, all right, let's hear it, and like would ask you to take a seat, right?
Yeah.
And that was he used to call it loosey goosey like all the time, and it was empowering. It was empowering.
And it'll all work out. God willing, and the creek don't rise.
Yeah. Yeah. Our website is the carbondalecej.org, by the way.
There you go.
Or no, carbondalecej.org.
Carbondale CEJ.
Carbondalecej.org. Yep.
And you've worked on that.
I had a lot of help from Alicia Kimball, and I've just kind of been changing some things around, and like basically, yeah, I think having a website right now is really important.
Yeah. Just to be visible enough that like when people come looking for that story, that it's there.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Absolutely.
There's, just that story. I mean, it's crazy to think like, that all of the work that Jim did throughout his life that didn't stop. Like this is, I can't fathom where a lot of people would be without that particular place.
Yeah.
Like they're for them and to connect them with others. I'm no different. Like a lot of fire that I have in me, like comes from that place. And that's why I'm glad to be like back in the mix. Like,
right.
It's
good to have you back in the mix. Definitely.
It's like a, I don't know, Disneyland for people with hustle. Like if you whatever you dream you've got, you will see it through in that space. And it's just crazy because it's just this little 4-room building that everything's been something. I don't know, what are the rooms even right now? Like, is it still just computer shop up front, kind of print shop office and back?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
is like this.
The back. Before Jim passed away, we had the idea to turn it into like kind of a place where people could do artwork and like host it up on the walls, kind of like a creative space / art exhibit.
Yeah.
And we do have a pottery wheel right now.
Oh wow.
So we had a lot of plans before Jim passed away, and we're still gonna do them, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's thinking about like pottery wheel. That's to me that's like a no-brainer. Like that's make some pottery, sell that alongside Solomon.
Absolutely.
On the food cart days. I mean, it's just and the ability to contribute back now, like having more now in terms of like social and actual capital, right? Like there are several people that are recent products of activity at the center over the past let's say 4 years, 5 years, right? And that itself is now like manifested like in a return to like, hey, we've all got to take one little piece of Jim and like play our particular part of this.
Yeah.
And just like it's your powers combined. We are. Well, that's what you do. You're like that sounds very Captain Planet-y of you.
The Captain Planet of care work. Yeah, exactly. And like he made it to 92 years old, which, by the way, Jim, that's impressive.
Yeah.
And we miss you. But that like we knew it was coming, but now that it's actually happened, it's still like oh man, like. And then we also lost someone else too, Byron, who used to work the front desk too. He passed away, and I feel like this year like we've been losing a lot, but we're also in a way gaining a lot too, right? Because now everyone's like all hands on deck, and who wants to save a nonprofit, right?
Well, it's kind of
it's more than that. But.
No, nobody, just that to know, like it's so funny. I had been thinking about Jennifer like all day, when I got that call from her. And I was like, how did you know how much I had been thinking about you?
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I got something to ask you. And I was just like, yeah, let's go. To saddle up, yeehaw. Like,
So when
you know,
did you first meet Jennifer?
So Jennifer, like Jim hadn't quite made the decision to go full bore with hiring Jennifer yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like right around the time that he decided he was going to put in to have a director in the space was around the time that I got involved. And so I mean that would have been 2017-ish, right? And just a year or two prior had been kind of the activity where Reverend Logwood had the shoe shine bench, and they were doing activity engaged with Centerstone and a handful of other things where it was kind of like limited operation for particular social hours that and just right around that time was in blossoming, because that's when Eugene and Solomon and a couple other folks working through the the institutional spaces that they had like kind of found the stability in the center to be able to branch out into, okay, now I can get a house, get to work, get my own business, get my hustle on, right?
Yeah.
Like get to get to rebuilding life. And so it was all like very, very, like not the very, very beginning, but like the real initialization to kind of like from an idea to an organization, right? Not quite yet an institution, because you got to be around for a while and have I mean, there's plenty of bona fides that exists within the CV of the center, but it's like time. You just got to add another 10 years before it becomes an institution, right? But like it's at the step from concept to organizations when I got to be there. And I remember Jim had pulled her in from working at Cavco. He would go in there and get his copies for like large legal documents made, and that's how he connected with Jennifer, and then that's how she came on board. And
I remember when I first met Jim, I said, "Hello, Jim," and he looks at me and doesn't say anything and just keeps walking.
Yeah.
It was really funny. I think about that because like now, like towards the end there, like I was changing his bandages, right?
Yeah.
Because he had an operation on the back of his head, and just to see how like kind of closed off he was to just like people walking around who, like, and then to just the difference there. I'm sorry, that was really abrupt.
No, you're fine. No, you're good.
It's amazing to think about, like, how hard he came off, but like deep down he had like one of the biggest hearts I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and he knew who needed to be approached and who needed to be just kind of brought along, right? Mm-hmm. Like an initial approach to you may have pushed you back rather than drawn you in.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good point. That is a very good point. Yeah. Yeah, because it's like, oh, you're not going to say hi to me? All right, let's see what you're walking into. Let's see what's in here. All right. Yeah, he was always very tactful in many ways.
Was the dog still alive?
The dog is still alive, and from what I've heard, is with his family.
Very good.
So,
I just remember being covered in dog hair and crumbs.
Yep. Yep. And then if you talk to him about it or point it out, he would say he just didn't give a shit.
Yeah. No. And I like, for me, right, so I'm like this very like, like there are a handful of dead bugs in the room that like I still have to like continue to clean up on a semi-regular basis, because we're just in an old building, and I'm right behind like a door that feeds directly to outside. So like I get just a little bit like moths and whatever else infiltrate the room. And it's like, I can't even handle that, let alone a Jim with a dog and a Jennifer with no shoes and a whatever, like, but I can't help but be like, in the space, like drawn to like a place where I feel like I belong, even though like all of my wacky sensitivities and neuroses, like, just are on,
Yeah.
100 when when I'm in the space or I'm around particular folks. But it's just like, just deal with it, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
there's a bigger thing in hand here than you being uncomfortable about, pet hair or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, towards the end there, like it didn't get any better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. He just had this kind of attitude of like, well, if they like us, okay, great. If they don't, yeah, fuck them.
Yeah.
And that was Jim.
Well, and I mean, it's because, they're, if they didn't get it, they were never gonna contribute to begin with.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're either interested in this work or you're not.
Yeah, and what I like about the CJ too is like Good Samaritans, which I stayed at, and then the Warming Center, which I worked at. And that's weird being on the different side of the glass, right?
Yeah.
Like they do tackle the problem of like homelessness to the best of their abilities, but what the CEJ does is try to tackle the reason this person is homeless in the first place.
Yeah.
And I don't even like the term homeless. I like, lacking basic needs. Because, like, it is a basic need. No one should die out in the street. Like, it's especially in somewhere like Carbondale, where there is so much empty rental property that it's just rotting because people don't want to buy it. But meanwhile, there's people that are falling asleep under the pavilion, getting woken up by police and probably harassed.
When we could just have people housed.
Yeah.
What's that take? Probably not a lot.
How
Hey,
hard?
we need people, right?
Yeah.
We got a lot less people than we used to have. Would help if we
Yeah.
had some more people.
Yeah. And yeah, those people staying there could work on the house, and it's just there is. Anyways,
There's things that we can and should be doing. And you're right. Like there are the tough part about the structured facilities is the 1 in 5 folks that they may not be able to help because there's a particular part of that structure that has to be in place to service a volume of people.
Yeah.
Right. Like you have to have structure in servicing a volume of people at Good Sam or at the Warming Center or what have you. But for those 1 in 5 folks that fall through the crack, what is the unstructured plan for them? How do you deploy the fireman's trampoline to catch them before they hit the ground?
Besides committing a crime on purpose, that way you have a place to sleep, aka jail.
Yeah.
It is an ongoing issue, and it's not getting any better.
I mean, it's terrifying where we're headed with the end to a moratorium on eviction and what kind of mass displacement of people are we going to see in this country for reasons way outside of any regular working person's control.
Yeah. When the moratorium ends this month, doesn't it?
And the Supreme Court just struck it down. They struck
Really?
down Biden's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So it's
yeah.
real close, and I don't know what state work or state functions have been put in, if there has been anything in Illinois, but I'm sure in plenty of states that could care less about that they're just like, good luck.
Yeah.
Burn or freeze to death, whichever one fits your fancy.
Yeah.
We don't actually care.
Right. And it's absolutely horrendous, just an inhumane. And I don't really I feel like I don't like talking about something unless I have a solution where it's just put people in fucking houses, right? But it's way harder than that.
Yeah.
It's absolutely uncivil. Just despite a pandemic, despite people getting sick and dying from a respiratory virus, oh, you don't have money for rent. Okay, well, good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one. That's a
Yeah, I
that
mean,
is,
it's
and, like,
what do we wish to provide for
the
as
best, like,
society?
the best retail. Well, and yeah, exactly. Like, I think people coming together with skills and like building a world away from that
Yeah.
is our best route of action. I think when it comes to the moratoriums ending, like, obviously, like, protests and all that, which, I mean, at least try to send some kind of message. Maybe people should learn more about squatters' rights. People need to brush up on, like their, like, know their rights and all that. And because, yeah, I mean, if they ask you to leave, just don't go without a fight is what I would tell you.
Well, and that's that's such an interesting way to kind of wrap on this, right? Like, don't go without a fight, and like that's the lesson, right? That I think Jim would impart on anybody. Like, don't go without a fight. Like, that's part of the law, right? Like, don't just take whatever the system says it's going to give you. Like, challenge the system. Like, don't be afraid to pick up a book and like throw it back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's the lesson. That's the lesson. Episode 89. Have a good one, folks. Whatever that one may be.